Alright, you guys ready to start the show?
Mm-hmm. Hello, Bytemaster.
Welcome.
Thank you for coming on and talking to us a little bit. I think we have some really interesting things we're going to talk about this week. Do you want to get started with any updates and we can move forward from there?
Oh, there are so many updates I can't even possibly talk about them all this week.
Well, I know the Voting DAC thing was the biggest thread to me, but if there's anything that's more important to you, you want to let us know first?
Well, there's the Voting DAC thread, and then there's also the peg and the nature of the peg and how tight it holds versus new bits, and what we've learned.
Can we talk about that real quick?
Sure, I'll talk about that because that's relatively easy compared to how big the Voting DAC is going to be.
Okay.
People say, why can't BitUSD market makers hold a tighter peg or hold a peg as tight as new bits? And the answer is there's no such thing as risk-free market making. When it starts out with low liquidity, you're going to have a wide spread, and as the liquidity improves, you get a narrower and narrower spread. So the risk a market maker takes is buying it from you, holding the asset, and then turning around and selling it within the spread before the real price of Bitshares X changes by more than the spread. If they can't buy and sell before Bitshares X moves by the spread, they can lose money. So that's the main issue there, and that's why the spread is where it's at. And because BitUSD is created, all bit assets are created by immediately selling for a volatile currency. Well, I'm going to back up here and make it super clear, super simple. The value of Bitshares X is unknown to the market. The market is trying to guess what it is at any given point in time. And all we know is that the value is somewhere between 50 and 60 million. And it's up and down, left and right. But the price you see quoted everywhere, there's almost no volume of Bitshares X at that price. Spread widens on Bitshares X substantially before you can get to any substantial depth, right? If you wanted to sell $100,000 worth of Bitshares X, that would significantly move the market. As a result, to say BitUSD is pegged to $1 worth of Bitshares X, well, BitUSD is pegged to a fuzzy number.
Yeah, it moves based on demand and multiple other variables.
Right. So market makers are trying to peg to a fuzzy number, which means they have a spread equal to the fuzziness in how certain the market is on the value of Bitshares X. And that is that's the reality. There's no way to escape that. So as Bitshares X volume increases, as the spread on Bitshares X versus BTC and USD on various exchanges narrows. All right, so I'd like to go back to the peg and highlight something that needs to be hammered in. We know with 100% certainty that the peg is going to hold as long as Bitshares X had any value whatsoever and its volatility is reasonable. How do we know that? Because every single short is forced to cover after 30 days. When they are forced to cover, anyone trying to sell their USD just right a hair on the other side of the price feed is going to have their order matched first, and they're going to have to cover into all existing USD before any new shorts can cover into it. So that means that once we start getting to the end of the 30-day expiration period and all these shorts are forced to cover, you're going to see that liquidity providers are only risking 1 month. If no one's willing to buy it right now, if you hold it within a month, you'll get the full amount, which means that if someone put a giant sell wall for 5% discount, people would eat that sell wall up and sell just the hair inside the feed, and they'll know that they'll make that profit within 30 days or faster, because when was the last time the high water mark on BitUSD?
Because it's an option. It's a contract. It's a contract. Not like it's a contractless contract. You have to cover after 30 days.
Exactly. So because they have to cover after 30 days, that means that they have to buy, and they have to buy anything that's available on the market. And so you are guaranteed to get the price feed for your USD if you wait. If you wait for up to 30 days.
How much is the transaction cost for this?
You just need to update your order to make sure that it moves with the peg.
0.01%, or depending on what delegates choose?
Well, yeah, the transaction cost is about 1 cent, 1 or 2 cents. So the cost right now of getting liquidity, if you buy BitUSD and sell this, you might have to wait a little bit, up to 30 days, and you'll get it. And you might have to move your order to make sure you stay in front of the price feed. So you might have to pay a couple transaction fees to keep it updated periodically. But if you have a large order, say you bought $1 million worth of BitUSD, and then after 2 weeks you decide, gosh, I actually want to get back into Bitshares X, I made a mistake, or maybe some bubble corrected, and now you're ready to get back in. You can put your order in and just keep it in front of the price feed, and you'll be able to liquidate $1 million within 1% or 2% of what you originally paid, because the price feed is only as accurate as the fuzziness on the Bitshares X to dollar ratio according to the market. So within the spread of the dollar to Bitshares X, you'll be able to fully cover, redeem your BitUSD for Bitshares X in that period of time. And if you want to go any faster, you lower your price a little bit, and other people will come in and take the spread. So you could probably liquidate any amount of BitUSD for 5%, maybe 10%, worst case scenario, discount to what you paid at any time. Now, if you buy BitUSD when it's cheap, then when it comes time to liquidate, you're already ahead of the game. So buying cheap USD is a great way to enter your BitUSD position, and then it allows you to sell cheap. It's only if you're buying full price BitUSD that you have to worry about, but that means there's a lot of demand for BitUSD if you're buying it at full price. So obviously you're buying it at full price, you'll likely be able to turn around and sell it at full price immediately after you bought it. So overall, there's not these huge sell and buy walls, but that doesn't mean that it's not liquid, and it doesn't mean that the peg's not holding.
So
you're very safe in BitUSD.
I hate to interrupt, but like from a newbie perspective, because we have like a lot of newbies, who are interested in Bitcoin, but this is pretty like hardcore stuff compared to Bitcoin. We can all agree, right? So you're essentially saying that whenever USD goes lower, there's going to be, even if somebody puts a really low sell wall to try to like take the peg down and like destroy the peg, there's going to be so many people, the value proposition goes up for them significantly. So the chances, like, they're going to want to buy it up early, like when it goes down that low, because that essentially reduces their risk overall. And that's why you're saying that the sell walls will be eaten up?
Yep, yeah, the sell walls will be eaten up by people that know that they can buy into the sell wall and wait and guarantee to get the price feed. So you're always guaranteed to eventually get the price feed as long as you're willing to wait 30 days on average. Worst case, not on average, worst case. On average, it'd probably be 15 days.
Roger that.
So if someone's selling at 10% below the price feed, you're getting 20% per month, or 1,000% per year interest rate to buy that sell wall and turn around and hold BitUSD for a little bit. It's so anyone who's that urgent can get out. Anyone who said, all right, I just want to get into Bitshares X at a reasonable price, they set the urgency by how much of a discount they're willing to sell for. But it's no longer a situation where you have to worry, well, no one's ever going to buy it. It's worthless. No, it's not worthless. The shorts have to buy it. And once people realize that, it's going to be huge. Now I wanted to mention an idea I had, and something I'm going to try to find a way to make happen. And this is going to be huge for BitUSD if I can work this out. But before I get into my new ideas, there's a release date for the new market yet. We are currently testing it. I believe it's completely implemented. What's in there now is live, is stable, and so we're trying to avoid any extra unnecessary hard forks and to establish greater stability. So we've gone almost 2.5, 3 weeks without a hard fork for Bitshares X. And so when we release the interest update, we expect not to have to do a hard fork afterward because we're no longer in emergency mode. So that's why it's taking longer, only because we're trying to be more thorough. We have identified and fixed the lossiness of the interest rate calculation. So we now have a much more smooth linear interest computation. There's no penalty for paying partial payments on your covered position. So we're pretty pleased with our interest rate calculation and implementation. There are lots of little details that we want to work out on the user interface to make sure that when people see the interest and make payments on it, they know this is the principal, this is the interest, this is, if you make a payment of $100, this is how much is going to principal, this is how much is going to interest, and all these things to just make sure that the user experience with the interest is solid from the day one. So you could probably expect less frequent updates from us moving forward. As far as getting to version 1.0, I would suspect that once we implement the escrow transaction, which is about 50% implemented at the moment, and we get to the lightweight client implementation, then we'll be at 1.0. Until we have a lightweight client, I don't want to declare 1.0. So on that note, the next version of Bitshares X is also going to have a mail system built into it, only available from the command line at this point in time, but it will allow you to send messages from one user to another user within the Bitshares X blockchain. This is primarily done as a foundation for the transaction notification necessary for the lightweight client. So eventually when you do send someone a transaction, it is also going to send them a message notifying them of the transaction containing the transaction ID. Then the wallet would just scan all transactions it is notified about instead of having to scan the entire blockchain. Messages are not stored in the blockchain. There are mail servers that store encrypted messages based on the public key, and they require proof of work for publishing a message to them. I don't like proof of work, but I do think it works well as an anti-spam measure. We're trying to sell BitUSD to the average user. We have to convince a whole lot of people to buy BitUSD. And it's really difficult to convince millions of people to buy BitUSD because they have to trust crypto and yada, yada, yada. What if we could convince a single credit union to accept BitUSD, or not to accept BitUSD, to hold BitUSD, and therefore offer higher interest rates on their CDs? Now, the credit union accepts depositors' money. They issue IOU to the depositors. The credit union takes the full risk for BitUSD. They get a super high yield on it. And their depositors get a higher interest rate than they get at any other credit union. we now get a large volume of BitUSD being purchased within our system without having to win over customers to crypto.
So
instead of killing the bank, you're just going to be the bank.
We give tools for banks to basically, the bank is going to deposit their money in us and let their users not worry about it.
That's pretty huge. I saw you posted up on the forum about it a little bit. I guess you guys are still investigating, regulatory viability of this.
Yes, I'm trying to find out anyone who knows anything about regulations around what assets a credit union is allowed to hold. Is it defined in the charter of the credit union, or is it defined by a government statute, or is it a free-for-all? So it might be possible to create a new credit union that does this. That's a less desirable approach than finding an existing credit union that's willing to do this. Other variations on this is to find a credit union that's allowed to hold corporate bonds and is willing to extend loans to a company that does nothing but hold BitUSD. And so we're working on various ways to get banks, allow another entity to take the BitUSD risk and give the USD holders a more familiar banking relationship counterparty with guaranteed convertibility, no spread.
out of curiosity, does it have to be a bank, or can it be somebody that works with banks and creates like a technology like debit card machines, like where you can just withdraw ATMs, or you just withdraw money?
You need to find someone who's willing to take responsibility for being custodian of the BitUSD and willing to liquidate the yield on the BitUSD to pay the interest due on their loans to the customers. If you can find someone who's a bank to find some system for securing that BitUSD held on deposit and collecting the yield, then you're good. You also need some way of estimating what the yield's going to be. It's variable interest rate, constantly changing. And to estimate the risk. So if BitUSD is paying 10% and the bank pays their customer 3%, the bank can pocket 7% and still offer the customer a better deal than anywhere else around. And so it's just a matter of quantifying the risk to the bank to figure out how much they can pass on to the consumer versus how much they can hold for themselves.
Out of curiosity, are there different Eagle Eye makes a good point. Are there different potential jurisdictions that have other fiat currencies that might be more that at least initially will require less concern with regard to this type of stuff, like with regard to the regulations?
Yeah, you can use this for any asset. You can even find someone that's doing a gold ETF equivalent, or basically doing gold loans.
Because you know, the interesting thing, I read a story not too long ago about the Philippines. They're creating their own, essentially, I can't believe it, but they pre-mined it's either 7 million or 7 billion of these e-pesos, and they have, 8 billion is what it is, and they have 7 billion of them that the government is keeping, and 1 billion of them are going to be in circulation for the people. To me, that sounds really bad for the people in the Philippines to have that little control over their currency. So something like that, something like BitPeso over there would destroy that type of system. I mean, it would make it so, and the government really wouldn't be able to do too much about it, because it would be a far better value proposition for the citizens of that country, and their government really can't really afford to do a whole lot to you. So you're bringing that solution, and there's not going to be, they really don't have the resources to really fight it. Is that a bad idea? Where do you guys stand on this?
Well, you'd need resources to market it in a different country, so it's give and take there.
All this stuff can happen in parallel. Once we figure out the strategy, anyone can approach their local credit union or do research to find credit unions who might be interested in such a system, and bring them to us. We can talk to the bank about it, figure out what the pitch is, make a video pitch, and just let people know, hey, you can do this type of thing. You can even be like, you can do it on a personal level. Tell your friends that you will guarantee them some % interest if they deposit money with you for at least 6 months, and tell them exactly what you're going to do with it. Say, I'm going to put the money over here, and then you take all the risk and you take the profit on the spread. But just scaling it up and just let people get the idea that the way you can bring this to regular people is to offer to be a middleman that takes the risk.
Can you talk a bit about, if going the credit union route, and you're talking about business bonds, the exposure to counterparty risk?
Yes, the holder of the USD is exposed to the counterparty risk of the bank. And if you go with the company is the counterparty and the bank is the counterparty. So yes, there's counterparty risk with those approaches, but most consumers out there don't care about counterparty risk. They care about yield or interest rate. They're willing to accept counterparty risk. It's FDIC insured. Now, they might not be able to FDIC insure such a system, but either way, it's the bank saying, hey, I'd like to borrow money from depositors, and I'm going to try to invest it to make money. You could set up as a hedge fund of sorts. You put money into the hedge fund, and the hedge fund invests in BitUSD, and that's all it does. The interesting thing about this is the more banks that do this, it's going to increase the supply of BitUSD until the number of people willing to short Bitshares X falls off and the interest rate starts to fall. So it's self-correcting.
Do you view this as sort of like maybe even like an educational tool where people will do this for a while and begin to realize, wait a minute, I don't have to do this to the credit union. I can just go directly to BTS X or BitUSD?
Yes. Once you start getting some large buyers doing this, everyone's going to have a lot more confidence in it. And users will start bypassing the banks. But the banks can still make a killing on the spread by offering this service to their customers.
So there's an incentive for banks to take up once this becomes a little bit bigger there, and the risk seems to be smaller. There's an incentive for them to come into the space and try to fill it.
Exactly.
Well, the banks could also have provable reserves that are on the blockchain.
Also true.
Is there a way for a third-party DAC to utilize BitUSD directly, or would they be better off creating their own bitBTC and then having like a gateway of some sort to deposit to that DAC? Does that make sense?
I think every DAC should have BitUSD backed by its own shares on it.
So essentially, like for instance, like CineDev's coming out and talking about wanting to make his own clone of, well, I don't know if it's clone, so to speak, but that's generally the perception. So that's what we'll go with for right now, of Bitshares X for Cine. And you're saying that there would be a way, would BitUSD be just like an asset that's logged on there in the blockchain there too, and it's got its own peg that kind of like floats against the Bitshares X version, or how would that work?
The Bitshares X version is pegged to the dollar. There's no difference, and you don't want to have a fuzzy peg to a fuzzy peg to a dollar. You just peg directly to the dollar. There's no difference between BitUSD and one chain and another chain other than liquidity.
Yeah, so you're saying the Cine clone wouldn't be, it would just be accepting the peg.
Yes.
Okay. And then it could have its own assets and stuff running on it, and
right. So the Vote DAC is going to have BitUSD on it, its own BitUSD, but no other bit assets.
oh, what? Come on, Bytemaster. Give us more.
You guys want more, huh? You can't handle more.
Oh, I want to try.
Thank you, sir. May I have another?
All right, so let's make one thing clear, that when you analyze voting, the cryptography behind voting doesn't require a blockchain. Everything being done to handle it. You might have a blockchain that can store all the submitted ballots and signed by multiple people as they're being submitted and going around delegates, but you don't. There's no money to be made directly from voting. Voters aren't going to pay to submit their ballot. It's very difficult to have a business model with transaction fees for submitting a ballot. And it's very difficult to convince a government they should contract with a decentralized entity to host their elections on a blockchain. Voting is a real challenge. So why in the world did I just say the Vote DAC is so interesting?
Because it doesn't need a blockchain.
Well, we still need to have some kind of token that accumulates value, right? And this token needs to have BitUSD on it. So how does that tie into voting?
Could voting just be an asset on Bitshares X, already existing chain?
No. DACs have commercial value. Voting is a loss leader. Governments pay to put on elections. No one wants to pay to participate in one. So a voting DAC, the voting is not going to be decentralized. It's going to be trust-free and cryptographically secure. But the decentralized piece needs to accumulate value as a result of voting going on. So what is the Vote DAC going to be? Well, in short, and this is about all the more I'm going to say right now, because I don't want to completely reveal our strategy. It's going to be a direct competitor for Ethereum.
Wow.
You heard me. I would like to also mention that it's going to combine the ideas we talked about in the Open Bazaar clone. So Ethereum meets Open Bazaar meets BitUSD meets Keygraph.
Now this is just getting to be too big of a party, I'm thinking, for me to understand.
Talk about eating your own dog someday.
Jeez, man. Talk about, you got on today.
I have a question. I'm not sure whether it's related, but what exactly is behind proof of person? What's that about?
Now, proof of person was a faucet designed to provide free registration of new users and perhaps give them an initial little seed to get on a blockchain if you don't have any Bitshares X and you want to get your name registered. So it's basically proof of person is there to prevent Sybil attacks against the faucet. That's about it.
Faucet farming.
Okay. Why does it tell me that my mail address is already registered? Is it a bug or is it something?
If you log in with a registered account, they say that it's already registered. If you have an unregistered account and you log into proof of person, then it will register your account for you.
All my mail addresses are already registered, but I didn't do it.
Your email addresses, you're saying, are already registered? Yeah. Proof of person has been, the reason we haven't made big announcements of it is they're still testing things. So they might be restricting email addresses as a bad error message. I doubt that if you're the only one with your email address, that it's already registered if you haven't used it.
Okay.
So, out of curiosity, does anybody have any more questions regarding this topic?
We're probably going to, it's going to be significantly upgraded from what Nikolai did on Key ID. We've got some improvements on that already, and combining it with a Turing-complete scripting environment and BitUSD. So it's going to be a significant update, and we're going to be working with Agent 86 on that.
So it sounds like a lot of big stuff coming up. From what I could tell, there was only like maybe like 10 or 15 people working there. Is it just like everyone's working 24/7, or are timelines being extended? It just seems like you have an insane amount going on in parallel. A lot of big ideas.
We are coming up with funding plans to hire teams to grow the workload that we're talking about doing here. Bitshares X is going to be moving toward 1.0, and the remaining funds we have from AGS, which were donated after February 28th snapshot, are going to be directed toward this new DAC. It seems only fair that the funds should be divided. We shouldn't spend all the funds on Bitshares X and leave no funds to develop a DAC for the people who gave afterward. So Bitshares X has its fund and its budget, and we're trying to scale the burn rate on Bitshares X to the funds that we have in Bitshares X that we received from the PTS snapshot, while funding another development team with the remaining AGS funds. Now, burn rate is the rate at which you're consuming your runway. Runway is the amount of time you have until you run out of cash. And this new DAC is going to be support capital infusions as necessary to fund its ongoing development once it's released. So a large part of the new DAC is to make sure we have plenty of runway.
Can you speak a little bit about what you see your involvement is with Bitshares X going forward? I get the feeling that you're gonna have it established and then maybe move on to other things, or do you see yourself sticking with it for a year or so to really help it mature?
I'm going to be helping the entire Bitshares toolkit to mature. I'm not the one behind Bitshares X. That's DACSUN, and DACSUN has funding to support developers to support, maintain, and upgrade Bitshares X. The marketing team for Bitshares X is preparing on-ramps and a big marketing push. But the goal is to stabilize Bitshares X features and have far fewer releases of Bitshares X, primarily bug fix releases. There's going to be one more overhaul on the user interface of Bitshares X, and of course BitSapphire is working on their own wallet for Bitshares X. So I suspect Bitshares X is going to continue to develop in user experience and so on and so forth. But I have to focus on the toolkit and expanding the tools for everyone and all DACs everywhere. And that's my role. But there are going to be people working full-time on Bitshares X to promote and bring it forward. And of course, everything I do to improve the toolkit helps to improve Bitshares X. This new work could be pulled into Bitshares X, giving Bitshares X a Turing-complete environment if DACSUN wanted it. But that's up to the maintainers of Bitshares X to figure out how to do that.
So one of the things I feel like you really brought to the table, along with the actual programming, is a financial vision or an economic vision that you've baked into Bitshares X. Once the product stabilizes, do you feel that sort of vision is going to be less required, or is there people on the team you feel have a similar depth of knowledge of the economics? Someone like maybe like well, I don't know. Just
so those two people understand the economics very well and can actually explain it. There are other people on the team who I know understand what's going on. They haven't perfected the ability to explain and defend and innovate. And of course, we're training new people every single day, and there's other people on the forum who seem to get it. But the ones that have really risen to the top are Agent 86 and Nikolai. And if there's anyone else who shows the ability to do that, there's probably going to be an opportunity for them to come on in a business development role. We need people that understand that type of thing to go out there and pitch it and explain it to people that are asking tough questions.
Bytemaster, if any of these developers, if a developer is listening to this and they want to contact you regarding potentially working for Invictus, how do they get a hold of you?
Just start posting on the forum and send me private messages on the forum. There are people, we have a long list of people, I haven't gotten back to some of them. Primarily because we are trying to watch our burn rate and make sure we've got a strategy. Right now, I'm also heavily interested in people that are willing to move to Blacksburg and make a long-term commitment to the project. It's just a lot easier for everyone to do that, as well as people who are willing to be paid entirely in BitUSD on a non-contract basis. So, I want people out there who are independent, motivated, and not just employees. And we've got a great team here with Vikram and Nathan, and even Dan and Eric. They're all more or less autonomous, and I don't necessarily tell them what to do, but we sort of reach a consensus on what each of us should be working on. And I'd like to grow more people like that so that it's not like you can chop me off and this project dies. Everyone's working together to figure out how to grow and direct it. So, yeah, I really like the team we put together here. They're great guys, and I'm hoping to find more people like them.
So the talk of basically, I guess, killing proto shares and just making a final snapshot, I guess that is all the result of this Vote DAC direction, because I mean previously Nikolai was talking about, or Toast was talking about using the PTS DAC as like a smart contract type platform. So is that, I guess, is that the general thought there? Is to kill PTS to free up resources, and then
there's a whole bunch of things. One is PTS is painfully slow to use, has a mining issue. No one wants to actually upgrade it. And then it's also a matter of confusing users. I want to avoid introducing 1 million DACs until one DAC can reach critical mass greater than Bitcoin. And so I'm really concerned about fracturing the market at this early age. Once you get a DAC or two that are the size of Bitcoin or greater, and they've got a large enough network effect, then you can start having competition between them and have them start specialize into different business areas. But I want to focus all my effort on one system while providing a toolkit that allows competitors to exist and has no barriers to entry. But I think dividing up DACs based upon features, domains is one feature, markets is another, voting's another, identities is another, smart contracts is another. You end up with all these BitUSDs and network effect, and the value of these systems is n squared. If you create 10 systems with 100,000 users, or one system with 1 million users, the system with 1 million users is an order of magnitude more value than the 10 systems with 100,000, because it's n squared is the value of the network. So we definitely want to corral users into 1 or 2 DACs rather than 10 DACs. It also reduces maintenance costs and support costs and things like that. I mean, this is all very new software, and having to pull in patches and do releases. And if we find a bug in one thing, we've got to have someone move it on to the others. It divides up capital. People say, well, I don't know which one's going to succeed. I've got to choose. Well, now you can just bet on one thing. It improves our marketing message. We've got 2 things out there, or 3 things. Domains, Bitshares X, and this unnamed system that is going to be related to voting.
Can you speak a bit about, in lieu of proto shares, you mentioned Proto-DACs, like what Toast did. But from my perspective, and perhaps others, he released the DAC and it had, DNS as its exchange token. What is it about it that makes it a Proto-DAC?
A Proto-DAC is nothing more than a DAC that's going to hard fork in the future to add features necessary to complete its vision.
So BTS X was a Proto-DAC as well in the beginning.
BTS X, and still is, right? It's not feature complete yet.
Okay, perfect.
I guess I'm having a kind of a hard time understanding why you want to essentially make a snapshot and then pretty much that's the final snapshot. From what I understand, that's how it works with PTS, right? Like what you guys are thinking about doing is,
I don't want to pay to, right now we're paying $1 million a year, $5,000 a month, assuming we're actually giving 5-minute blocks. It might be slightly less. Either way, we're paying enough to the miners to hire 2 or 3 developers to support PTS, and our whole mission is mining is dead. Why is the core asset, the PTS, that represents our entire ecosystem, which is anti-mining, why is it based on mining? It just doesn't make sense. It's actually, our ecosystem is paying for those miners, no matter which way you slice it. So ending PTS with a snapshot is effectively cutting losses to our ecosystem. Now, cutting losses would also end liquidity of PTS, but someone else could issue a user-issued asset on Bitshares X that honored the final PTS snapshot and, theoretically the AGS snapshot. And if they wanted to, they could get the consensus of everyone out there that yes, this should be the follow-on. We've always said that DACs that honor DACs that honored PTS and AGS are legitimate. So, someone could do that. We're not going to do that. PTS is not an obligation. It's a security. It helped build our community. It united us all in the early days. It gave the development fund to Bitshares X, and for DNS and for some of these other systems. So, PTS has more than served its purpose, but obviously liquidity has value. If you remove liquidity from PTS, some people might say, oh man, I wouldn't have bought PTS if I knew that I was going to lose liquidity because I was expecting PTS to go to the moon with millions of DACs, but now I can't sell it. So I think the value of the liquidity on PTS is a relatively small portion of its price.
my question, I guess, would be, and I'm just let me know if I'm wrong here, but it seems to me like there might be some people who are upset about no longer being able to get into snapshots because they'll no longer be able to buy their way into the snapshots using the PTS. Is there any mechanism by which that's going to be reinstated, or
you just buy your way directly into the DAC? Developers of new DACs need your money. If you like a DAC and you want to get a part of it, you buy it early, right after it launches in Proto-DAC form. And then when you buy it from the developers, rather than buying PTS, you're actually helping fund the development of the DAC, rather than buying PTS doesn't help fund development of DACs.
Okay.
I guess also, like Stan said, you can't lay the ground floor forever.
Okay. Now, is it going to be up to the DAC developers, I'm assuming, then, what they're going to accept? Or is it going to be like, oh, we require that you accept BitUSD for your funding, or something to that effect?
We don't say anything about what anyone is required to do. There are no contracts or obligations between us and PTS holders. We are merely recommending that there be one final snapshot date for PTS, after which point we are going to sell all of our PTS and be done with it. If you guys want to keep trading PTS under the old consensus, fine, I guess we won't have any stake in any DACs that honor the new PTS, or what's left of PTS. But the consensus can still stay with it. It's just that we won't be building those DACs.
Right.
Is there a recommended way of a DAC developer to receive donations to help his endeavor?
Could you repeat the question?
Basically, I'm just trying to figure out. So I agree. It's obvious that investing in proto shares doesn't help the developer of a DAC. But I'm just wondering, what mechanism do you see a DAC developer using to receive some sort of donation or funding for their project?
I think all future DACs should fund themselves through inflation, fund themselves through issuance of shares through the delegates. I don't think that fundraisers, the style of peer tracks, is the safest way to go.
Have you ever thought about having a new class of delegates? We discussed this in the forum about having technical delegates, which are just signing blocks, and then also have business delegates, which do not have technical tasks but have to fund something and can also be voted by the shareholders. Have you thought about this?
To steal something that Vitalik is already saying, you want to code as little into the software as possible necessary to implement every possible feature. The existing delegate system supports technical and non-technical delegates. The technical delegates just don't set a very high pay rate. The non-technical ones set a high pay rate and campaign on it. And the users, the shareholders, vote on how many technical versus non-technical delegates they need and how much pay they should get. And if there's a non-technical delegate that needs to run a node, well, they can have a high enough pay rate to pay someone to perform that role if they don't know how to do it directly. Or someone could be a middleman and say, all right, I'll be the delegate, and I'm a technical delegate, I'm going to run it, I'm going to give all my money to this guy who's going to make all the decisions. There are many different ways that people can skin the cat. The fact is, at the end of the day, you're trusting the delegate with the money that they get paid while they're still in office. And that doesn't change if you have technical or non-technical delegates. So keeping it simple allows all possible outcomes.
Okay, agreed. Makes sense. Thanks. I have another question. Can you tell us something about the upcoming user interfaces? I figured out we're going to have two different user interfaces, one developed by Bitshares and another one that is developed, as far as I know, by either you guys over in Blacksburg or by Brian. I'm not so sure about the relations.
Brian has been working with Cass on a refined interface and layout that will then be developed by the same team that did the current interface.
So it's basically, I guess it's not going to be finished until the next release already, will it?
I'm expecting that you're probably looking at a month to 2 months until the refined interface is done. It's more or less a complete rewrite of the GUI side of things.
Okay, thanks.
I have a question regarding Quixote founders. In my understanding, Quixote founders, they are rewarded one-day AGS. But in recent DNS DAC, it seems they are not rewarded DNS units. I want to ask, in the future DACs, will Quixote founders will be rewarded? Will they be honored?
We will publish a list of all the public keys and accounts on Bitshares X for the Quixote founders that claim their Bitshares X. If they don't claim their Bitshares X, we don't have a public key, they can't be honored. It's up to each individual DAC developer to figure out what they are going to do. Obviously, AGS is a non-binding deal. It was just our recommendation. So we're finding that third-party developers, it's really hard to do that because I'd say only about 25-30% of Coyote founders actually registered their ID and gave us a public key. And I'd say less than half of them have claimed their Bitshares X. So it's really a difficult demographic, and the amount of work required to manually pay it out is extensive. So considering that the founder donations were donations with no strings attached, maybe they just don't care, they were just trying to support us. That's fine. But there is no obligation for any of this stuff. We were just trying to be nice and give the Coyote founders something in recognition of helping us get off the ground and supporting us early on. And I believe that anyone who claims their Bitshares X will have received greater value than they gave in the first place. So whether or not future DACs honor it, no skin off your back is, I guess, the perspective I have on it.
Okay, thanks for clarifying this.
Not to take away from your time, Bytemaster, but this is a good time to remind everybody here. You're all our eyes and ears, right? This is here so we can all increase the value proposition for all of us and kind of also guide developers on how all of you want to see things move forward. So keep your eyes out. If there are projects that you really think are extremely valuable to the ecosystem, feel free to invite them on. And if you can't do it, let me know and I'll do my best to schedule something myself. But you guys are all this is here for you to open up conversations and communication channels. And with regard to third-party DACs development, Bytemaster, is there anything that I've been thinking about this a lot? CineDev has been on the forums trying to talk to people about creating a clone of Bitshares X, but I keep going back to finding myself asking if there might not be other things that third-party devs could be working on that would help the Bitshares ecosystem that they could also share drop on their own coins. Are there any things like that that you can think of off the top of your head that might be valuable?
There are so many opportunities in this space that you ask me, my mind blinks. But I know every single day I come, man, someone should do this. Man, someone should do that. Why isn't someone doing this? So I guess one that comes to mind is a merchant API. Can we create a simple PHP script that will allow people to accept BitUSD with minimal hassle? It can even be a trust-free system where a merchant can just put a pay button on it and they get paid in BitUSD, and have a third-party service provider host all the validation of payment and the invoicing and everything else. There's an opportunity for someone to perform that role and give merchants guaranteed dollar-for-dollar peg for BitUSD payments, provided they're willing to wait 30 to 60 days. Then the payment processor can collect the yield for 30 to 60 days and make money on the float. There is all kinds of ways to create businesses around this. Creating any store that's selling things for BitUSD. Creating phone apps is something someone could do and make money. Create the app, sell it on the Apple Store with the Google Store. So go forth and innovate. This is like, I love the Bitshares blocks website. That's he's really taken the lead there, and it's going to be the de facto block explorer for Bitshares, which means that it's probably going to end up being the de facto source of information on the lightweight clients. So anyone who gets a first mover advantage by establishing themselves in any niche is going to be able to adapt and pivot into profitable positions, either as delegates, as signing nodes, as escrow agents for transfers, and the delegate pays might not seem like much now, but what you're doing is you're becoming an incumbent. And when it goes up and becomes something significant as transaction fees and volume increases, you'll be in a much better position than someone new trying to come in after it's profitable. So there's definitely opportunities for entrepreneurs in the space.
So you're essentially saying that the people who are running delegates and not making money, the trust level that they gain from that is substantially valuable over time.
Exactly. Anyone who's a delegate for a while, particularly if they're a delegate who's doing something like Bitshares blocks or AGS Explorer or faucets or doing something productive in the community that also being a delegate, now they're earning trust. The delegates that are silently sitting there and collecting fees and not doing anything aren't earning as much trust because, well, they're not showing any investment into the ecosystem other than breaking even running a node. But the more you put into the system, running sites like Bitshares blocks while being a delegate, you're going to have substantial long-term rewards. And the delegates in our future system are going to have much higher pay rates right out the gate because of the ability to raise capital to fund their salaries.
Does anybody else have any questions regarding that?
I have a couple of. It's a continuation of earlier, but so Dan suggested that we have, or that every DAC would have its own version of BitUSD, is like their own on-ramp, off-ramp. But wouldn't that mean that the coin has to be on or the token has to be on an exchange first for the price feeds and so forth to work?
Yes, but any DAC that is worth its salt will have no trouble getting on an exchange.
So, do you think there's any value in having having the on-ramp be bitBTC, because that way you could also take direct payment of BTC as far as your...
It's not so much the on-ramp, it's so that you can have a stable unit of accounts within the system. If you're going to have a marketplace or a domain auction or something like that, it's better from a user perspective to price things in dollars than in shares of the DAC. So it's about the internal usage of a stable unit of account rather than the on and off ramp.
And it has the psychological advantage over, people who've been using US dollars their entire lives are more familiar with the ratios that they're spending on certain things. So they're going to be more likely to be able to use it and find the right values for items they purchase.
Exactly. And it means that you don't have to worry about long-term contracts being denominated in a highly volatile asset. So once you start doing things like smart contracts or auctions, I bid this, the price went up, my bid's no longer valid. Or I bid that, the price fell, oops. So, yeah, if you want to have an ad with a buy it now thing on it, then you do that in Bitcoin. Well, the price could swing enough to make your ad, nope, not anymore. So that's why you want to have a stable unit of account on these systems.
Well, and do you mind if I ask, this is kind of along the lines of something that happened this week. I ran into a guy who owns like 7 different pizza places around the area where I live. And I was talking to him about BitUSD because they're expanding. And talking to him about how to, the value of it, being able to hold it and actually potentially earn interest on it, not being able to be bailed in on. And he really was interested. But I guess the question that I have to ask is then, like, what can users like me do to kind of explain things like this, like the value to a merchant? Because really the power of the network effect is that we have different people who, no one might even know that they're out there acting as agents.
Convince the merchant that they want to own BitUSD to earn interest because it's better than their bank. And if they accept BitUSD as payment directly, they can have lower fees than their credit card.
So basically what I was saying. Okay.
That's the whole story. If the merchant doesn't want BitUSD or doesn't trust BitUSD, you're not going to get them to accept it as direct payment without a service like a third party guaranteeing them dollars for it.
Sure. So it's more use it as a store of like your own personal vault, like you guys say, right? You become your own bank.
Yeah, basically Bitshares X has BitPay built in.
It's amazing. Xerox asking about, and this is actually a good way of getting into the Reddit questions that we missed last week because you guys are so dang busy out in Vegas gambling and partying, I'm sure. All joking aside though, can we talk a little bit about cross-chain trading and how that's all going to work?
Cross-chain trading is an interesting concept that works in very low trust environments where you can't even, where the governments have shut down all centralized exchanges, but it's too inefficient to really use for real transactions. It's probably better to just use the simple escrow system. If both systems support escrow, you do 2 escrow payments from one use to the other, and the escrow agent can resolve any dispute. That's probably easier than completely atomic cross-chain trading. So I think, like many concepts in the crypto space, there's the reality of what is good enough, and then there's the theoretical, how trust-free can we do this? And I think sometimes the usability of completely trust-free systems is beyond the utility that they provide. I.e., the cost is greater than the risk.
Gotcha.
But the thing is, these conditions might vary depending on where you are in the world, and this is supposed to be a global system.
Yes, that's true. The blockchain does support cross-chain trading if someone wants to implement a patch for the wallet to do so. It's just, as you can see, we've got a lot on our plate. It is a large amount of work and low value as far as how much value it adds to the price of each chain. So therefore, it's at the bottom of the queue, if you will. If someone took it up and implemented it, it's almost all wallet side. It's not blockchain side that you have to worry about. Then we would gladly integrate it. It's just not, we're not going to spend funds on it until we've implemented everything else that has higher value proposition and we have funds left over.
Makes sense.
Okay, so Xerox saying he doesn't understand how it can work without the delegates syncing both chains. All right, I can explain the theory of it real quick. I create a transaction that allows you to spend it if you sign for it and you know the password. Right, and the password is, I store some hash and you have to provide the value that goes to that hash. And so there's 2 chains. I'm on chain A and you're on chain B. So I come up with some password and I send it to you on chain A. And I say, well, you can claim it if you happen to know the password and you sign for it. And if you don't claim it in such an amount of time, like within a day, then I can get it back by signing for it. So you have 1 day to claim it with the password. Likewise, after you see that I've published that transaction, you publish a transaction that says, hey, I can claim your money with the exact same password, which I already know, provided I claim it in half the time. So when I claim the money you sent me, I reveal the password, which allows you to claim the money I sent you. And so the two clients have to be on both chains, but the delegates don't need to be on both chains. That seems to have answered his question.
Good deal. Do you guys mind if I ask? There's another question that was pretty good question on Reddit, and it's from Bitcoin Boost. And he says it's for Brian or you. At the Inside Bitcoins event, did you or anyone on the team have a chance to talk to any of the larger exchanges, such as BTC China, or processors such as Coinbase or GoCoin? Were they already familiar with what you were doing with Bitshares?
We talked to one guy at Bitstamp in Vegas, and basically learned most of these large exchanges are playing it extremely cautious with the regulations. They want to have very simple accounting, and I don't blame them. So, most people we talk to really, they like what we're doing and they want to integrate it, but it's just a matter of time, resources, and following up on them. So,
does it seem like a concern over regulations is going to be a great hindrance moving forward?
It really depends on parties. Different parties have different thresholds, and it might not be the regulations. It might be that, well, we're willing to deal with Bitcoin even though it's gray and we're uncertain, but we want to minimize any further exposure to anything. I think all that will change. It's always a snowball effect. So I wouldn't expect everyone to adopt it overnight. We have to obviously get the interest rate patch out there, and then start having liquidity increase, and so on and so forth. We are going to be buying a bunch of BitUSD with the AGS funds and paying developers with BitUSD. So there's going to be demand for BitUSD from that perspective. I have complete faith in it. All the dollars that I hold that I don't need for immediate spending, I hold in BitUSD because I get a better interest rate there. I have complete confidence in BitUSD, and eventually the market will too.
And then there's one more question, if I could ask it, since I like to ask. I try to get at least 3 of them for everybody who can't make it. As the Bitcoin conferences start spreading to locations such as Tel Aviv, Paris, Seoul, Singapore, it's not realistic to think that you and the entire marketing team will be able to at each one. Do you have backup speakers who can carry the torch in other locations, or do you plan to?
Agent 86, Nikolai are potential backup speakers, Brian to some extent. But generally speaking, these Bitcoin conferences are very much the same group of people. Less and less value, less and less interesting. The past several, each one I've gone to has been less interesting than the prior one. As far as the people there, the new opportunities, they're almost all focused on Bitcoin specific stuff. I don't see anyone from Ripple or Litecoin or Next. Bitshares was, we had more people than any other of the top 10 cryptocurrencies. Every conference we go to, it seems like. And I'm not really sure the return is high enough. And I think the problem is, in my experience, the conferences are not bringing in new users. It's where all the industry players get together to meet and talk to each other. So I think our marketing is better off focused on end users, on preparing the same speech or presentation we would give as a high quality video, and then distributing it to mailing lists with millions of traders on it. So we can get the message out there more effectively, a larger audience. You might be able to reach 200 300 people at a time speaking at a keynote, whereas you can reach thousands of people with the same message with a properly done marketing campaign. So I'm not convinced conferences are where it's at, and we will probably be participating in conferences less in the future. I'm no longer going to Money 2020. It would be 15 minutes on a panel of people with Litecoin and Mastercoin. So considering the time and expense associated with that 15-minute opportunity, I suspect it just wasn't worth it at this point in time.
Roger. So basically, you're saying that it almost seems like the Bitcoin ecosystem is kind of almost plateaued in some ways, and it seems like there's more value in reaching out to people now that we're getting to the point where you like DACs. It's about time for DACs to exist and really start making their stand. Essentially, is what I'm gathering.
Exactly.
Nick Coates, and please tell me if I'm saying that wrong. PizPie, okay. Is talking about digital expos, and actually he also told me about like a virtual conference that they were going to have for the Mastercoin Foundation.
It's hosted by the Mastercoin Foundation and people and the Bitcoin Foundation. They're just setting it up for everyone. It's like a platform, kind of what Bitshares does. It sets up a platform so people can come and present their ideas. And they've been using this in the Forex market before, and they had some pretty good results off it. So this is going to be the Crypto Money Expo that I linked there. It's going to be the cryptocurrencies first for it. And there's 80, it's free for the first year actually. They got their keynote speakers and whatnot. But it allows for that private networking from the convenience of your computer. So you don't actually have to, you'd think attendance would be higher once the word gets out.
So they essentially are planning on making it a pay-to-play thing later on?
They haven't said exactly, but I just know this year it's free. So AZ and BlockNet, we signed up for it, and I told you about it earlier. I think Bitshares would be a great addition in there, especially like you're saying, they're that one select crowd, and this kind of opens up the door to new networks and possible other private connections.
Yeah, I think there's definitely an opportunity for doing those things. Going to conferences was a huge benefit early on because we attracted and made partners and things like that. We now have the networks and personal connections to reach out to anyone in the cryptocurrency space. And of course, we've got a name big enough, being in the top 4, that people take us seriously when we contact them. So everything now needs to be focused on gaining users outside the cryptocurrency space. You get diminishing returns inside the space. I think your conference there might be a great place to meet new users. But by far the greatest value we get, anyone can attend those things and represent Bitshares, wear a Bitshares shirt, and talk to people about Bitshares. So it will go viral like Bitcoin did in time.
And this is one of those places where delegates can really do a lot of cool things. They can fund people going to these places. And it might not be wholly possible quite yet, but when delegates are making, $3,000 or $4,000 a month, it might be a little bit closer to a possibility to send somebody to an expo somewhere too. So there are a lot of options.
Right.
Well, does anybody have any?
I was saying you could have an asset for it, actually, like a crowdfunding asset or your DAC, just strictly for that, for getting people to these conferences. People wanted to donate to it or whatever, crowdfund for it. Just an idea.
It's a great idea, actually. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Bytemaster? And Bytemaster, do you have anything?
Nothing here.
Okay, well, if no one else has anything for Bytemaster, he's been here for a little bit over an hour and a half now, and we appreciate you coming on and spending the time. And I appreciate everybody coming and asking the questions, because it helps new users, and I think it helps us all around as a community to kind of keep at least a semi-frequent communication channel like this open. So please feel free to start your own things. There are plenty of cool things going on the forums, and as I said before, just feel free to come on and hold your own hangouts or contact me. And we have it over in the sidebar. Whenever you log in, you can contact us at beyondbitcoin@gmail.com. And we'll try to work out some things so we can get people on here talking about their awesome ideas.